Paul, thanks so much for joining me today. For those who don't know you, what would be the elevator pitch? Who are you? What do you do? Maybe talk a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am the head of Refractive for the U.S. Zeiss business. I've been in the industry, as we talked about, for 25 plus years. I've really enjoyed it. I've number of roles. I originally come from a clinical background and have spent time in clinics, private practice. I was also in the U.S. Navy when we first started doing
Mm,
refractive surgery. So it's been quite a ride. Been able to see a lot throughout that time from a different angle each time.
mm.
So it's been a fun career.
Yeah. So, what would you say is one of the most common things you've seen over the last 25 years of the most successful practices?
Most successful, I would say, have started off with a very solid business strategy and plan.
Mm,
Unfortunately, and we see this a lot from a sales perspective. There are a lot of practices that really don't know what their all-in costs per procedure are.
mm,
So they're spending money on marketing, they're spending money on all sorts of overhead. And at the end of the day, they don't even know how to price a procedure in order to become profitable.
mm,
The best practices have really thought that through. Have really thought about, what is their cost per lead? What are they spending on marketing? How are they compensating and incentivizing an employee who's answering the
mm,
phone or following up with leads? So the best practices have really spent the time on the front end to get buttoned up to make sure that everything is in line so that they can become profitable and successful with refractive surgery.
mm,
And if they don't, then they end up kind of becoming one of those practices that just dabbles in
mm.
refractive surgery.
That's really good. When it comes to kind of the current market condition, it's about, I think about a month ago now that the Surgical Council came out with a report, showed what all of us kind of assumed would be the case, which is a continued downward trend, with LASIK and other vision correction procedures. You're in a unique spot with Zeiss and specifically Smile. What are you noticing at some of the practices who have kind of effectively worked through a down market and have been able to kind of pivot or get creative? Like, what are some of the things you're seeing that they're doing, maybe to kind of avoid the downturn impacting them as much as others?
Yeah, it's a big topic right now. We saw this during COVID as well, which was very interesting. And I think from a marketing, I wear two different hats at Zeiss, so I'm sales and marketing. And when I put on that marketing hat and I look at how practices are allocating their marketing dollars, we
Mm,
actually saw during COVID, for instance, that some people just stopped marketing altogether. And it was interesting. I had conversations with some very well known big practices in Texas during COVID. Two practices in the exact same city. One
mm,
doctor telling me that their volume had gone so low that they had to switch from two refractive surgery days a week to a half a day a week. And then down the road, just a few miles away in the same city, another doctor who's buying another laser and opening up a second center because they were so busy.
mm,
And we've seen that model play out before, and we're certainly seeing it play out now where people get this impression that the interest is not there, and so they just stop marketing.
mm,
uh, and and that has an impact on the practice. And again, practices that have weathered these types of market conditions in the past know better. But many do have a knee-jerk reaction that, oh, we heard this is going down, and they have a reaction to that where they just stop spending their marketing
mm.
dollars altogether. I've worked with, hand in hand with Lisa and Liana and Jim from the RSC for well over a decade now. We've been following these numbers to kind of see, what's happening. My take home message from talking to a lot of individuals is nobody knows. Everybody wants to blame the economy or consumer confidence, but I travel a lot. I have a team that travels a lot. There is not a flight that I get on anymore that's not fully packed.
Mm.
When I go through the airport in Atlanta, there are people from all walks of life, all age groups that are traveling. So restaurants are busy. People are spending money, and I think that the interest is there. The interest, the intent is there. But there are some other market dynamics that I think are, negatively impacting the volume that we're actually seeing treated in the U.S.
So when you think of those other impacts outside of the economy, because it does seem to be the easy thing to blame, but I kind of chuckled because I've had a couple of flights recently, and you're right. I mean, it's chaos. It's every flight's full, they're overbooked. But so anyway, what are some of the other factors that you're seeing in the market? And I guess a second part to that question is, depending on what those factors are, what are some things that you've encouraged practices consider? Again, aside from the excuse of, money or economy or people don't wanna spend or whatever.
Yeah. I think, know your patient, know your practice, know your price. What we have seen over the last couple years, so if we go back, to the last few years, 2022, when the numbers really started declining, we saw some new technologies come into the market. And I won't blame anyone in particular, but if you go back, I think in 2004, Dan Dury, one of the titans of refractive surgery, wrote an article about the cost of LASIK, and he really went pretty in depth into what his overhead was like.
Mm,
The cost, analyzing his equipment that he was using. I mean, from everything that was being used, the staff overhead, the marketing spend, and really came down to a figure for what he had to charge per eye to break even. And if you fast forward 20 years later now, people are really charging the same amount per eye.
mm,
So they haven't, taken into account that it's costing them more, hourly employees in that 20-year period. There's a lot of inflation that's occurred, and we're trying to charge the same amount.
same.
So that's why I would say, really know your price and how to set your price and what the market will tolerate. I think one of the things that we have seen is if the market's been conditioned for 20 plus years to look at and expect a price of 24, 2,500 per eye, and then you try to introduce another technology that swings the pendulum in the opposite direction, where you're trying to demand $6,000, $7,000 per eye, you're going to have a lot of patients walk away, and it's that price elasticity demand that you're hitting, where now that you're priced yourself
Mm,
out of the market. I think there's a middle ground that's there, and there's a room for every technology, but we do have to be careful with, is it really the economy, or are we trying something new where we're pushing something because we haven't raised our prices in so long that we're overcompensating?
mm. Yeah, that's really good. Well, Paul, thank you. We keep these things really short just because we know people's attention spans are short, but we really appreciate you sharing some of your knowledge. And yeah, again, I was really fascinated by the extensiveness of your work experience, but then obviously the breadth and exposure you have at Zeiss. So thanks for being willing to jump on and share some of this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kate. I appreciate you having me.